So, Berto, why do people love Snape, Severus Snape? Why do they? He's supposed to be kind of a secondary character, and at times he's almost like a villain. But for many people, Severus Snape is their favorite character from the Harry Potter books and the movies.
Whoa, 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 bleed to lover.
Why do people?
It's because he is the ultimate tragic character, and yet initially we all felt he was a very good villain. And yeah, it's just like there's so many good archetypes wrapped up and demonstrated via that character. He's also, I think the as it was portrayed in the movies was done so well by Rickman. And so I think the people that read the books probably felt like myself fell in love with the complexity of that character and just how much we didn't like him, and then how much we grew to understand all the things we didn't understand. And then the people that saw the movies probably loved also the performance that he gave. And yeah, it's great. I love it.
Yeah, it's interesting. People love Vader and Kylo and Loki and Ramsay Bolton and Theon Greyjoy and Hannibal Lecter, Patrick Bateman.
But in all those examples, all those were real monsters.
Yeah.
And Snape defies those expectations.
Right. And I think that we love these characters, or some people do, because they hold a lot of power. You know, all these characters have tremendous power. They almost seem untouchable. And Snape had a lot of power.
Yeah.
And also, at some point, they give off a vibe, or it's revealed that they've been bullied as children.
Yeah.
They're very misunderstood. And they tend
school shooters.
They don't need people. I don't need people. I'm not here to make friends. That kind of thing. And so I think that it is an attractive persona that some people wish they could adopt. You know, to be powerful, to get revenge on people who don't understand us, and to not need anyone around. You know.
And by the way, initially, spoiler alert and all these things. But initially, he was a very good way for us to have something to root against without fully showing all our cards.
Yeah.
You know,
I looked up some Snape memes online, and there's one where a bunch of Alan Rickmans are on a plane and they say Snape's on a plane. And then another one where Snape is looking kind of sad and he's angry and he's like, "Stop whining. You know nothing about the friend zone." So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the psychology of Severus Snape. What do you say, Berto?
Let's do it.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Who are you, Berto?
My name is Humberto Castañeda, and I own a small apothecary shop in downtown Seattle.
So a little caveat at the beginning, as I always say whenever we go into stuff like this, is there are super nerds, Harry Potter nerds out there, and there are, 7 books with lots of words in it and lots of details, and we might get some of those things wrong. And if, as I always say, if you come to a psychology podcast to get your definitive details on Harry Potter, there's something wrong with you. And, so don't worry if we get a couple things wrong. That's not the point. The point is for us to chat about this and also to provide some analysis on the character and maybe help people understand how people can end up in situations like this.
Yeah. Look, it's ultimately about also remembering fondly the memory of Severus Snape.
Yeah. And so, Berto, what's your experience with these books? Like, how did you grow up with these?
Well, that's a great thing. So at the time, I had a different job back then. I was cleaning and detailing expensive automobiles, and my boss came to me and said, "Hey, we may need to do a deal with J.K. Rowling and her people because these books, this series for kids is doing really well. And at the time, we would license famous things to put on our cars, like decals. And so I thought, okay, so I was given the first 3 books to read as homework assignment by my boss. And I took them home, and I looked at these books, and I did not want to read them because the covers looked so childish.
So you hadn't heard of them before?
I hadn't heard of it, and I looked at it, and it's like this little awkward kid on a broom with glasses flying around. And I don't know if you remember the art of the original books, but it wasn't that inspiring. It was sort of clunky, you know?
Yeah, yeah. The art for all 7 books were by the same.
Yeah, but I felt like once I got to love it, but when I first saw it, I was like, okay, I don't like this.
Well, it made it look like a very second-rate child's book.
Yeah, totally. So I was totally against it, but I sort of had no choice. So I sat down and I read that first book. And I was hooked, man. Then I couldn't stop. I read the second one. When I started, only the first 3 had been out, so that's why I had those 3. I read the first one, the second one, and the third one like back to back. I was so engrossed in them, and because I read them,
did you end up doing work with them?
No, unfortunately, we didn't. But that was the research we were doing that we would potentially have led to putting decals on Rolls Royces. But anyways, I loved the books, and I love those first 3 books so much because I read them right one after. It's like binge watching on Netflix or something. So I knew all the little details, and I saw the little recalls from book 2 and book 3 that harkened back to things she laid down in book 1.
And you're not
so excited.
And you're not a big book reader.
Well, not anymore. When I was a kid, I read a lot more, and nowadays I read a lot of graphic novels.
Yeah. And then what? And then
so then every time a new book was coming out, I was right there waiting in line, getting my book. I didn't get him signed or anything, but I was always trying to get the book right away, and I would often stay up all night.
So you would have been in like your mid-20s up to your 30s reading these
That's embarrassing to admit, but I was certainly not a 2-year-old.
Well, I think a lot of people were, of adult age who liked it. And you really liked the books.
I really liked the books.
And you really liked the movies.
Yes. Now I didn't like the books evenly. I felt, to me, the best books were 3, and 6 and 7. Like those were the best. But I also liked some things about 4, and then 1 and 2, especially 1. 1 for me has a lot of problems, but at the same time, it laid out the universe, and so it was so good. When the movie started coming out, oh my gosh. Especially that first movie. Like I remembered feeling mixed feelings about the first movie, but I rewatched it recently, and Columbus got so much right with that movie.
Yeah, totally.
Oh my God.
Well, the first book, I remember when I was reading it, I remember thinking, man, this would be a great movie.
Yeah.
It's almost like Rowling or Rowling. Rowling, it's almost like she knew it was going to be made into a movie because the books are written in a screenplay kind of way. So much so that when I saw the first movie, I was like, well, yeah, of course that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Everything looked exactly the way I had it in my head,
Incredible.
except for Harry Potter himself.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I actually, what was different about Harry Potter?
The real Harry Potter in my head, the Harry Potter I had in my head looked like the guy in the front of the books.
Oh, a little nerdier.
Yeah, thinner and bushier hair.
Yeah.
If you look at Radcliffe's hair throughout the 7 movies, it's like every movie they tried, because his hair changed drastically. And there was one hair where it was like puffy out on the sides.
Yeah.
And it was like they kept trying to make it right, and it never looked right. His hair looked ridiculous, and Hermione was spot on.
But they changed their hair a lot too.
But it was always within the realm of my imagination.
Yeah.
Ron Weasley, spot on. McGonagall, spot on. Everyone was like exactly how I imagined them to be. Dumbledore was a little in my head. Dumbledore was much more epic, I guess.
Well, I felt that the first Dumbledore was like that.
Yeah.
But then, unfortunately, not what's his name, Ed or something, like the new Dumbledore. Great actor, and he really did pull it off.
Yeah.
But that first one was...
Well, he died, right?
He died.
Yeah.
He died, yeah.
So my experience was that I was doing in-home therapy.
Richard.
I was doing in-home therapy in the late 90s. I'd just become a therapist. Yeah. I'm 26, 27, 28. And the books came out when I was around that age. And I remember, and I would do in-home therapy, and I would go into the rooms of these kids, and they all had this book called Harry Potter.
That's how you saw the pattern.
and they all loved it, and and all the kids talked about it. It was a phenomenon among children, as each book came out. And and I remember thinking, oh, it must, but I've heard about a lot of books like that, like what's the Goosebumps and like Animorphs or
Right.
something. There's always been some kind of kid book that's been popular, it never occurred to me that I would read them.
Right,
It's like,
right.
and especially when you look at the cover, it's like, it's great that kids are reading. And I remember thinking that. I remember thinking like, oh, it's great. It's great that some book is appealing to kids and blah, blah, blah.
But I would never read it. It's just great that it's...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my mom talked about it, and she had them all on cassette because this is before CDs. I mean, it was during the time when CDs were around, but CDs were kind of new, actually. And for whatever...
New. This
Well-
was like late 90s.
Yeah, 10 years old. I mean, the first CD I got was like, the first CD I bought was probably like 91. Like I was still
Yeah.
buying records and cassettes up
Okay.
until...
And it was your mom, so I could see why.
Well, and people didn't have CD players in their car.
Oh,
because
that's true.
because
yeah.
they didn't have CD players that didn't skip.
That's true. Yeah.
And so everyone still and plus everyone still had their old stereos with cassettes, and so you mainly listen to audiobooks in cars.
That's true. Yeah.
And so she had all four of the first four books on cassette.
Wow.
And it was like several cassettes, like
I can imagine.
like 20 cassettes or something. and I just said, "Hey, could I maybe, borrow that, cuz I was getting into audiobooks, and so I borrowed the first one, and the actor who reads it is just fantastic.
Oh.
The way he reads it, and that first book is just so great, and so great on audio too, because it's just so easy to follow, and the story and the world building and everything was just so amazing. And so I listened to all 4 books like straight on cassette in the span of like a couple months.
Amazing.
In my Acura that literally had 300,000 miles on it. And because there weren't podcasts back then.
No.
So it was either like NPR or that. So that was my experience. So for me, and then eventually as each book came out, I would listen to the audiobook. I never actually read the books. But yeah,
but listening is equivalent because you got the extended story, not just the movie.
But I think one of the problems with audiobook is that with more complicated stories is as the books, as 4, 5, 6, 7, it gets a little bit more complicated.
Oh.
There's more characters.
Yep.
There's more things to follow. And I got lost.
And you can't quickly rewind
Right.
the pages and
Right.
Yeah.
So whereas book 1 through 3 are so simple that you don't
Right.
really, you can listen.
That's a really good point, because if you have all the books at your disposal, you can wait, where did I first read about it? You could go back to book 3, look at the chapter in question.
Yeah.
With audio, especially with tapes,
Yeah. it's just not
you
convenient.
can't do that.
Now, I loved book 1. I loved book 3. Book 2 was like not great. Book 4 was entertaining, and then after that, I lost interest for the most part. Now, in researching for this episode, I have a new appreciation for Harry Potter because I finally understand the story. Because I'd listen to the books on audio, and then I would go to the movies. But there's a lot of characters,
Yeah.
Every book introduces like brand new people and new ideas. Like the horcruxes didn't show up till late.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And I'll say book 5 and movie 5 for me that to me was a little bit of a low point, because it did get quite convoluted.
Yeah.
It had a lot less fluidity in the storytelling. This is how I experienced it anyways. Whereas I felt that, to me, book 3 and movie 3 were great. Were just really strong.
Yeah.
And I felt that book 6, oh my God, and then of course the finale. But yeah, book 5. And so if you're trying to slog your way through and you hit book 5, and I can only imagine with audio it'd be even harder, because it's so many names, so many new concepts, like you're saying.
Yeah.
And yet you're still not given the picture to give you the context of why all this is being introduced in the first place. So a lot of stuff is being disrupted from this pattern you had gotten sort of used to. it definitely starts in book 4, where all of a sudden they got the Goblet of Fire, you got a new thing. So it's already like, oh, it's not a normal year anymore. But then 5, everything really starts falling apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also bothered me that she had to follow a certain format for every book, right?
Yeah.
She had to follow a school year.
Yeah.
And she had to have certain themes, like Snape's always a dick to Harry, and Draco Malfoy and Harry always have a fight.
Yeah.
And, Hermione is always doing this. And everyone always hates Harry, even though he fucking saves...
It's Jack Bauer.
Yeah, even though at the end of every book, he literally saves the universe.
Yeah.
And yet... start right back up next year. Everyone hates him. Petunia hates him. Like it just I get it, because it's a children's book.
Yeah.
You have to follow the format.
Yes.
You can't and that's what kids want.
And that is in fact what made it feel familiar, because you remember that was the school year when we were growing up, right? The school year would start the same way every year, and you'd sort of start a little bit of a stranger, even if you had a few friends, and the year would progress. And at the end of the year, you'd have resolved the year, and you'd go into summer break.
Yeah.
And the next fall, it would all start over.
Yeah. And now, upon doing research for this episode, I have a new appreciation for it, but just a couple other negatives. And I think most of it is because I didn't really pay attention closely as I was listening to the books.
Sure.
So one of the things that and a lot of the negatives came out for me. For example, in most of the books, there would be all these wacky mysteries, and then at the very end, Dumbledore would come in and explain the whole thing. and a lot of times the explanation just didn't feel right, except for books 1 and 3. The explanations at the end of 1 and 3 actually felt like, oh, Patronus and Hermione had the time travel thing. Like, it all makes sense.
I agree on 3. On 1, even though I love it, the traps they set, and then they perfectly made sure that Harry and Hermione and Ron had just the right combination of skills to get through the traps.
Yeah, and it was such a weird thing, like
a chess game.
Well, that Voldemort is on the backside of Quirrell's head.
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, it's so weird. You know what I mean? But anyway, so it's like a Scooby-Doo episode, right? The other
that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. The other negative was the lack of diversity, which is very apparent when you actually look at the situation today. But I actually looked up the demographics of England and of Britain, and it is vast majority white people.
Yeah, although the books did have, and then the movies had it. Like they had Hindi people and a couple of black people. But
they had Cho Chang, who I have mixed feelings about. On one hand, it's like, an Asian love interest who wasn't like just there because she was Asian, like she was Scottish or whatever. But on the other hand, it's like Cho Chang, like that's not even a name. That's 2 last names. That it's like calling someone,
Castañeda.
Yeah, Castañeda Hernandez or something. It's like how more
Hey man, laugh, but whenever I give my first name, people are like, "Is that your first name?"
But at the same time, you have like all these very strange names. Everyone, Dumbledore and Severus Snape. Like everyone has a funny name.
That's fair.
So But anyway,
Albus.
Yeah.
Albus Dumbledore.
So, but I will say that doing research for this episode, I'm like, I kind of want to go back and read the books again because I think I was so lost that I couldn't enjoy some of the severe emotional swings that is particularly Snape's story takes.
Yeah, I think you owe a big can of apologies to Miss Rowling or Rowling or whatever.
So let's talk about J.K. Rowling, English writer. Harry Potter, the series, is the best-selling book series of all time.
Wow.
She produced the films. She's apparently a rags to riches story. She was almost homeless or was homeless or something, and then she became a billionaire.
Like, isn't she, other than the Queen, the richest woman in England?
No, but she's in the top, group of or women. I don't know.
I think she is.
Well, she's the first billionaire author, which
Okay.
is interesting. But she gave away much of her money to charity, which is nice. And she also said that Snape was one of the most important characters in the books.
Yep.
Portrayed by Alan Rickman. What movies can you name of Alan Rickman?
Die Hard.
Yeah, that's his first. Hans Gruber.
Love Actually.
Yeah.
Galaxy
Galaxy Quest.
Quest, yes.
Sense and Sensibility.
Right.
Dogma.
Oh, of course.
I've been rewatching clips on YouTube of Dogma.
Yeah.
It's a good movie.
It's got a lot of good stuff to it. Yeah.
Robin Hood, the one with
yes.
Kevin Costner.
Like, but why a spoon? Because it hurts more.
A little bit about his personal life is he met a woman when he was 19 and was with her his entire life.
Wow.
He died in 2015. He suffered from a minor stroke, which led to the diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. He died in 16 at the age of 69. All right, Severus Snape. Let's get into it. Now, his story is given to us bits and pieces throughout the 7 books, and most of his story is given in the final few chapters of the final book.
Yeah.
Which is just like what I was talking about in terms of the,
Right.
the Scooby-Doo thing.
Yeah. But it
kind of pays off.
and it has to be like that.
Right, because the whole conceit is like, is Snape good? Is he bad?
Yeah.
Harry, we're in Harry's shoes, and
right.
Harry is like, is Snape good? Is Snape bad?
Yeah.
And Harry has arguments with people. They're like, you got to trust Dumbledore. If Dumbledore trusts Snape, then you got to. And he's like, but you don't understand the things I've seen, and
Right.
and they're like, you're blinded by your hate, and all this kind of stuff. And it's so I get it.
Yeah.
That if
And
they
they
laid
gave-
it all out, then it would have ruined it, right?
And they gave plausible deniability all along because there were clearly things he did early on to save Harry or to prevent. But then they're like, well, yeah, he was paying back a debt. He was, or they were always, or, he respects Dumbledore too much, or any number of, okay, I see why. And so she always left the door open for but is he really, where's his real allegiance, sorry. And then when he does the unbreakable vow
Yeah,
with Bellatrix,
yeah,
I remember reading that and being like, wait a minute. Unless they're lying to me in the description of what an unbreakable vow is, he's got no out. So either this means he's really evil, or what is he doing?
yeah, yeah, right.
And that was such a good scene to write in because it puts the reader up to a decision. Now what? Because the whole time you could be, especially with poorly written storylines that try to do this, you'd be like, well, yeah, but there was this one scene where clearly you gave it away. Here it's like, it's sort of impossible as a reader to not be like, wait a minute, I thought I knew what was up. Because I remember at that moment, I still thought, no, Snape is good. And then I was like, wait, what?
Yeah,
How are they going to get out of this?
right. And you could make a case. Yeah. So, we'll get into it. So I looked into his history from the books, not from the movies. And at some point we learned that his parents might have fought quite a bit. Do you remember reading about that?
I don't remember reading that his parents fought, but it might make sense since he was a half-blood and his dad was a muggle.
And his father apparently was not a nice guy.
He did not like his father, no.
Yeah, his father was mean and critical. And while he was a kid living in the muggle world.
It's like, yeah, there's not much my father liked or something along this line.
Right. So we don't know much, but it sounds like things weren't so great. And as a kid, we see him. He's trying to make. This is all like through the pensive and all that.
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
Harry is seeing the memories of what Snape's past was. Snape doesn't tell Harry directly at this, but
Yeah,
Dumbledore's giving him insight, right?
or he took the tears of Snape in the end.
Oh, right. Yeah, there was that too. Yeah.
Snape was, as a kid, was awkward. He was kind of nerdy, and he didn't really understand how to make friends. But he tries to make friends, and it doesn't really work.
Sorry. Part of it is when he's training in occlumency and legilimency, is that, remember, he accidentally or he gets into Snape's head.
Yeah.
And then at one point, while Snape's not there, he goes into the pensive and all these things.
Yeah.
And he gets in trouble for it. But
Right.
that was part of it too. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah. So as a kid, he is rejected by other Muggle people and called a freak. But then Harry's mother, Lily, is nice to him. And it seems that Lily is his only friend. And so as a kid, you're Snape, Severus, and your parents are fighting. Your dad's critical. You're a mudblood yourself. You're awkward. Everyone hates you. You're being bullied, rejected by people. And then there's this one girl who is also a mudblood and who is... it's funny. I never knew if it was Mudblood or Mugblood because I never read it.
Yeah. Oh, and you didn't know how they were pronounced. Yeah.
But the way he pronounced it in the audiobooks, I could never really, because he's a Mugblood. Like the way he said anyway. But I read it today. It's
was
Mudblood.
Lily Potter a Mudblood or was she
a full?
I think no. I think isn't it that her parents weren't, neither of them were wizards or witches, but she had magic.
Oh, I don't know.
And because I thought Harry's dad was magic, I thought she was a Muggle and his dad was, but maybe I'm not remembering this right. All I know is that her sister Petunia was not magical,
right,
and really hated and resented,
right.
What's her name?
Lily.
Right.
There was a whole Lily, Petunia, Severus issue that was going on, which sort of set up Petunia resenting Lily and then raising Harry in a shitty way.
Right.
So then they go to Hogwarts to learn, the ways of magic as kids, and they continue to be friends. And Lily is put in Gryffindor with James, with James Potter, and Severus is put in Slytherin. And this is when Snape is sort of sad because he's like, my one friend.
Yeah.
And Lily is not really, she doesn't care that much because she's more popular and stuff.
And he already doesn't like James because he had already been teasing him. Like James was a bully. James was an asshole.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like Harry Potter's dad was a true sadistic, sadist, bully asshole. Like they do not, right? I mean, they don't paint James in a positive way at all.
They do this weird thing where they say, well, by the such and such 7th year or whatever, he had started maturing or whatever. But they didn't, I didn't feel they really sold how he could come back from being such a jerk.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like one instance. He bullied Snape for years.
Him and Sirius, the little gang there, the Marauders.
Yeah, him and Sirius Black and Lupin,
Remus and Pettigrew
were basically like Malfoy and Tweedledee and Tweedledum,
which was the poetic, beauty of it. But at the same time, that was one flaw. I don't know. I don't remember how it was in the books. Maybe in the books it was better, but from what I remember now in the movies, that was one flaw I felt, was that they showed how bad he was, and yet they didn't sell me on. But then why did she end up with him? Because he.
Well, I'll get into that in a second. But in the end, again, at researching this topic, from the books, they don't actually redeem him at all.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, they don't,
and they don't explain why Lily would be with him.
They said something like, he matured later, and he did technically save Snape's life.
So it makes total sense why Snape was such a busted up person, because the one person who had been for years. So you have your best friend.
Yep.
So Lily is friends with Snape throughout Hogwarts time.
Yeah.
From the time they enter at age 10 or 11,
always
through for several years. And so Snape, his only friend is Lily.
Yeah.
And he's in love with her.
Yeah.
Infatuated in love.
It's his life.
Lily, meanwhile, has other friends.
Yeah.
But Lily really likes Snape,
And Snape is trying his hardest at online dating and failing.
Yeah. And so, meanwhile, James and his other bullies are tormenting him,
Yep.
humiliating him in front of people,
Yep.
hanging up upside down to show his underwear,
Yeah.
making fun, and then this one thing happens where James is doing this thing to Snape, and then Snape doesn't know what to do. And Lily kind of gets a little smirk, like Lily's trying to defend Snape. She's like, James, back off. And then something kind of funny happens, and then Lily gets a little kick out of it, but then she tries to defend Snape.
Yeah, like basically what happens is they're torturing him. Snape gets really pissed, and to defend himself, he uses his spell that he created that can slash, and so he slashes at Potter and actually cuts him a bit. And that's when Potter cast a spell to hang him up and upside down, and then everyone sees his dirty gray underwear or whatever. And Lily, against her better judgment, smirks, but then kind of stops smirking as soon as she starts. But he sees this, and this is like
betrayal.
Yeah,
and he attacks her, calls her a mudblood.
Yeah,
and then she's kind of
fine. I'm not going to defend you.
So imagine that you're Lily, and you're this guy who has a crush on you for years, is being completely bullied and lashes out at you, kind of.
Yes.
And then you're just like, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
And not only fuck Snape, like, screw him, I'm not going to... She completely rejects him.
Yeah.
Snape goes to her, begs her to be friends again. She's like, nope.
Too late.
And you're sort of involved with this dark arts people, like, so I don't really like you.
Yeah, that's the one thing. Snape was not doing himself any favors with that.
Yeah, but still, like... But imagine you're Snape, again, you're attracted to dark arts because... The cool kids are not attracted to the dark arts, and you're looking for some power in the world.
You want to belong.
You want to belong, and you also are looking for some power to, like, strike back at this guy who physically manhandles you with his fucking wand every now and then.
And you have your grandfather's broken helmet.
Right. Yeah. It's like, learning kung fu or something, to defend yourself. And then one day you lash out at Lily while you're being hung upside down with your underwear showing, and she just completely just drops you like a sack of potatoes.
Yeah.
Not only that, but then she marries that guy.
Yes.
She, for years, is witnessing this bully being an asshole.
Yes.
And they both talk, Lily and Snape would talk shit about James and be like, oh yeah, she called him a toe rag. She called him a toe rag. Uh-huh. And then lo and behold so imagine, so that's the beginning of Snape's psychology.
Right.
You have a dad who's super critical, parents who are fighting, society that hates you. You finally go to a place where wizards, you finally feel like you're accepted. You're still being bullied.
Right.
You have this one girl who pays it, who's nice to you. You're in love with her. She's beautiful. She's nice, and she's strong. And then one bad bullying incident, you lash out at her. She drops you. You beg her to come back. She won't, and she marries your enemy.
Yeah.
That's got to screw you up.
Yeah.
That's got to give you a complex.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's take a break, and then we'll go into his adulthood. What do you say, Berto?
Yep.
All right, we're back from the break. If you haven't become a patron of the podcast, do so now. Go to patreon.com, become a patron of the podcast. When you become a patron of the podcast, you get access to all of our premium episodes that are only available to patrons of the podcast. You also don't have to listen to ads for the most part. All right, let's get back into this, Berto.
So you should add yourself as a patron.
So Snape is now an adult, and he's got a lot of baggage. He's got dad baggage, he's got Lily baggage, he's got James baggage, he's got society baggage.
Yeah. Voldemort baggage.
Voldemort baggage. So he becomes a Death Eater under Voldemort as an adult.
By the way, do you know that his Bogart, I just found this out today because I was also reading up, his Bogart is Voldemort.
What does that
mean?
mean?
The Bogart is the thing, do you remember where they had the closet in the second movie, in the third movie, where they open the closet and this Bogart takes the shape of the thing you're most afraid of. Oh. And like for Neville, it was Snape. And for Harry, it was a Dementor, and so forth. For Lupin, it was the moon, right? Well, they don't show us this, but so I don't know how we found out, or maybe it's somewhere. But it sounds like for Snape, it's Voldemort.
It's for Snape. It's Voldemort.
Yeah, so that's the thing he's most afraid of.
Why would he be afraid of Voldemort?
Well, because it's think about it this way: for the entire time we know Snape, he is having to play double and then triple agent.
Oh,
and occluding his thoughts from Voldemort at all times.
so you're sort of skipping forward in the story. Like,
Yeah.
I'm talking. He just enters adulthood. So
Yeah, no, but I'm saying that like at this time, Voldemort had already been a thing, right? So the Death Eaters-
Voldemort has been around a long time,
Yes.
correct? So he's sort of like hundreds of years old or something.
Yeah, and so not hundreds, because Dumbledore, he was a kid when Dumbledore was younger.
Oh, okay.
But the point is that the main thing had already happened, so that's why they had Death Eaters, right? Like there was already a cult of Voldemort, right? So he was already developing this obsession with that stuff.
Voldemort.
Snape was.
So explain to me, so Snape is an adult,
Yeah.
and he wants to become a Death Eater.
Yeah.
Is Voldemort alive at this point?
Yeah, because he's gaining power.
And Voldemort, has he ever died at this point?
No,
He's never died.
because remember, he dies when he tries to kill Harry. Yeah.
Right. So he's just sort of living his first life.
Yes.
As an
And
older
gaining power.
and he's gaining power.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he is older than Snape and them because he already went through school before that.
But he's not as old as Dumbledore.
He's not as old as Dumbledore.
So he's probably like 50 or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
40 or something.
Forgot.
Okay.
Lost track of the.
Okay. So Voldemort tells Snape to go to Hogwarts and spy on Dumbledore. So that's why Snape becomes a teacher at Hogwarts. He wouldn't have done that normally.
Yeah.
Why would he want to go back to the place that he was bullied so often? Right. But he goes back and he tries to become the dark arts person. He's rejected, and he becomes the potion master. Perhaps Dumbledore knew about something. Like,
I wonder if it's like Yoda with, or like I sense some darkness in you. So
yeah, right. Because it seems like Dumbledore would have detected something was up with Snape.
Right.
And Snape learns the prophecy about Harry or about Longbottom coming to destroy Voldemort, and he tells Voldemort about the prophecy, which causes Voldemort to figure out who it was. And Voldemort goes, "Oh, it must be Lily Potter's kid."
Yeah.
And then Voldemort is like, "Okay, Snape, thank you. I'm gonna go kill Lily Potter and her family now." And Snape is like, "Holy crap! What? Like
save Lily."
Right? The prophet. I'm trying to serve you as my
Yeah.
master. I tell you this prophecy. I had no idea it was going to be about Lily Potter,
Right.
like the one person on this planet that I actually like. You know. And he begs Voldemort to not do it.
Right.
And Voldemort's like, "Don't be stupid. Of course I'm gonna do it. This kid is gonna kill me, or the prophecy, blah blah blah." So Snape is in this decision right now.
Yep.
But is like, "Well, I could become full evil right now and just be like, well, I guess that's the way it's gonna be."
The breaks.
And but
And he would have, except for one person.
what?
Lily. Like,
Right.
If it was just Potter or the son, the child, he would have.
Right. It's interesting to look at Rowling's story in these like moments, right?
Yeah.
Like what if Snape had just let go and just said, "Okay, fine, I guess that's what's going to happen." This whole story would have gone a different way, right?
Yep.
In all likelihood, right? Dumbledore would have, or Voldemort would have ruled the world.
Potentially.
What was that Voldemort's mission? Was at least the wizarding world, right?
Yeah, I mean, he wants irrational power and to live forever, right? And so he's basically like, what he appreciates the most is the power itself, and he has no understanding of love. So he wants to live forever. So part of it is like, making sure that he can do all sorts of dark magic so he can live forever. And then the other one is consolidating his power and having everyone be subservient to him. So if there's a prophecy that says that something or someone's going to take him down, you could bet he would stop at nothing to undo that prophecy.
So now Snape is in a conundrum because he's begged with Voldemort. He's not going to change his mind.
Yeah.
And Snape can't stand up to Voldemort because Voldemort's too powerful.
And this is what he fears Voldemort above anything else.
Yeah. And so it's like, what does he do? Well, he does something that he never would have done in another situation. He goes to Dumbledore and he says, please save Lily.
And this is the beginning of his double agency.
Right.
When he first went to Dumbledore,
he was an agent.
Now he's a double agent.
Well, then Dumbledore says, okay, fine, I'll do what I can to fix the situation, but what are you willing to do for it? And Snape is like, he's like, I'll do anything. I'll do anything. I'll be your slave. I'll die. I'll do anything you want me to. I just want Lily to live because he's in love with her.
After all this time,
always. And so Dumbledore says, okay, fine, I will do what I can, but you will be a double agent now.
Yeah.
You're going to work under Voldemort.
Secret Agent Snape.
So then Voldemort arrives at the house. Now, this is where maybe you can fill me in because I don't really get it. What did Dumbledore do to protect Lily at this point?
So he was hiding. They formed a little network of people, and they were like hiding the location of where they were and all these things. It's just that Peter Pettigrew betrayed them.
Oh.
So Dumbledore did try, but unfortunately, they didn't realize that one of their best friends was going to betray them.
Okay. So Voldemort figures it out, arrives at the house of Harry Potter and his parents.
Yeah.
And James, the father, tries to stall Voldemort, and Voldemort kills him like very easily. Voldemort then tries to kill Harry, but Lily stands in the way. And Voldemort says, Lily, get out of the way. I got to kill your son. And then Lily's like, so this is another sort of interesting question. It's like, why doesn't Voldemort just kill her like he killed James?
I mean, he was trying. I feel like he was trying to do what Snape had asked him to do, because
right. That's what I was thinking. It's like, well, one of my most loyal servants will be. All I need to do is kill the kid, and if I keep Lily alive, then I'm fine. So that was, but they didn't really explicitly say that.
And it's interesting because at the time, he wasn't yet as monstrous as he was to become.
Voldemort?
Yeah. And he hadn't actually yet. In fact, if I'm not wrong, I believe Harry was only like the second horcrux or third. Like he was not yet the Voldemort that was the full beast. So
then Lily casts some spell that says that if she sacrifices her life, then it'll.
She didn't cast a spell. She just gave her life up to save her son, and that magic of love made it so that it put a protective charm on Harry.
And then Voldemort tries to kill Harry,
and that
backfires and almost kills Voldemort.
And as far as anyone knows, kills Voldemort, but he lived. And by the way, the reason he lived is because of the Horcrux stuff. Like if he didn't have Horcruxes, and if in fact Harry hadn't become a Horcrux.
Can you explain the Horcruxes?
Yeah, so there's this super, 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 super dark magic, which is that if you kill someone in just the right way and with a very important object around or something like this, part of your essence can go into that object. So it requires that you murder someone.
Part of your essence?
Part of your essence, the person doing the killing.
Why would you want to do that?
Because when you do it, it has one very, very big side effect, negative side effect, which is that your essence starts getting diluted and you become more and more monstrous. But the positive is that if they kill your body, they still haven't fully killed you because you still have part of you in these other objects.
This is him living forever.
That's part of how he wanted to live forever.
So I listened to all the audiobooks, and this is the first time that I've understood, and watched the movies, by the way. Is there something wrong with me that
I don't know if the movies make it clear enough, but I remember, I mean, I read those two books twice, I think, and
is it possible that I was paying close enough attention to the books and the movies, and have the whole Horcrux thing go over my head.
Yes.
And yet the Horcrux thing was the whole 6 and 7 book.
Yes,
right?
but I think that the way the movies play out, there's a lot of detail you don't have to understand in order to enjoy those movies.
But they're searching for the Horcruxes and blah blah blah, and I just remember being like, what the fuck are the Horcruxes?
Yeah.
And midway through book 7, they still don't even know what all the Horcruxes were, and I'm like, well, how are they going to wrap this up?
Right.
And anyway,
well, but that's just it. That if you're trying to eliminate, imagine it's Hitler, right? And we're like, we got to get rid of Hitler, and you're told. Yeah, here's the catch. He's put part of his essence in 7 other objects around the world. And even if you kill 3 of them, there's still the other 4.
Which is great, but why 7? It's so cumbersome. It would have been I think a better plot if it was like 1 or 2 or 3. But well, 7, because like, can you name the 7 Horcruxes?
No, but Nagini, Harry, one of the items from the house. I think the Slytherin.
But do you know what I mean? It's like it got not only did the Horcrux concept go over my head, but then I lost track of all. Anyway.
Yeah, no, you're right. But the reason there were 7 is because I don't think anyone in history had ever done that. All the stories he had read, it's like people had done it like once, and he was trying to go for broke.
Okay. So then, so Lily dies, James is dead, and Harry lives. Voldemort is gone and dead as far as anyone knows.
There's a diary. The diary was one of them too.
Oh, okay.
In Chamber of Secrets.
Okay. The Tom.
Yeah. Tom Riddle.
Snape is first on the scene to save Lily. Is that why he arrived at the house? Or just to see what happened or something?
Wait, when? What are you talking about?
So after the dust settles, Harry is still alive.
Oh, yeah.
The parents are dead. Snape is the first one to enter the house.
Oh, is he? I didn't remember that.
Yeah, or at least in the movies anyway. I don't know. I'm pretty sure in the books,
and
too.
He finds Lily dead.
Yeah, and he is devastated, and he holds her, and he's crying. And
oh, now I remember this. You're right.
Just a massive amount of grief for the Snapester. Okay.
Well, and I think in that moment, that is the irreversible turning point in which he will never be able to be loyal to Voldemort. If he was ever on the teetering edge of it, that was it. Like, he would have never been able to be loyal to Voldemort. So he had to, for then on, the rest of his life became essentially like, well, I will be I will be against Voldemort till my dying days.
Yeah, so now we have another psychological incident where you're in Snape's shoes, okay?
Right.
Again, you've grown up a loner. No one has liked you. You've tried to get people to like you. The only person that's liked you is Lily. She dumped you and married and had a kid with your mortal enemy, someone who was legitimately a bad person.
Yep.
And that's pretty messed up, but you still have just a place in your heart because you don't have anyone else for this person, Lily. Then you go to the dark side, and you have to be a little conflicted, right? Because he's not evil. He's only going there partially because he's just trying to find a group of friends,
right?
And also people who appreciate him, and also maybe to get some power so he can protect himself against bullies like James and his crew. And then that sort of leads down a road, and then you're like, okay, I told Voldemort about this prophecy. Snape's not a murderer, but he's like kind of an accessory to murder at this point, and he's not. I'm sure he's not quite so happy about that. And then he finds out that the murder victim is going to be Lily herself.
Yeah.
And then he does everything he can to completely, prostrate himself for Voldemort. That doesn't work. Then he goes to his mortal enemy, Dumbledore, another person that's on James' side. He's, Dumbledore's on that other side, and completely humiliates himself and begs and and hands himself over in a very humiliating, emasculating way. And all of that doesn't do anything. Lily still dies.
Yeah.
And not only is Lily dead, but Voldemort's now gone. And like your entire, side of the fence is now falling apart.
Oh, and by the way, Snape thinks it was Sirius Black who betrayed them, which explains why he hated Sirius so much.
Interesting. And so he is now the reason why Lily not only did Lily, so he's blaming himself for everything. Not only did Lily leave him in the first place because he struck out in anger against her. So he's beating himself up about that. Why did I call her a mudblood? Why did I do that? There's something, it's my fault.
Right.
If I hadn't have said that, I might have married her,
Yeah.
And not only is he torn up about that, but now she's dead because he fed Voldemort the information. It's his fault that she is dead.
It's a wonder he lived with himself after
and he's
that.
standing over, and then he goes to Dumbledore, and he's just like, well, I guess that's it for me. I'll kill myself.
Yeah.
And Dumbledore's like, no, you won't.
Yeah.
If you really loved Lily, you know what your job is now. Yeah. You have to protect Harry.
Yeah. Well, which sucks because that's one thing that Dumbledore didn't tell Snape is why he had to protect Harry. He sort of sold it as like, that's Lily's child, right?
So then because Dumbledore knows that he's a horcrux, right?
He suspects. He doesn't know for sure. But the long con plan that Dumbledore's playing is that he believes Voldemort split himself up into these various things. He thinks the snake is one of them. He thinks if Voldemort really believes this prophecy, he's going to come back. He's going to try to finish the job. All these things, blah, blah, blah. And anyways, the point is that he is, in fact, sort of using Harry as part of the pawn in his game. He doesn't tell Snape all of this, but he sort of sells it as like, hey, this is Lily's child. We must protect him because Voldemort's going to try to kill him.
Right. So the third betrayal the third horrible thing that happens to Snape is when Dumbledore tells Snape about this in the end. And he's like, so I need you, we need to set up a situation so that Voldemort kills Harry.
Yeah.
Because that will actually help us.
It's like, what?
And then Snape's like, wait a second. So I was only trying to protect Harry this whole time so that
you kill him.
So that you would eventually kill him. Like, and you never told me.
Right.
Like, you're just just another bully who lies. And I legitimately love this kid because he has Lily's eyes and blah 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 blah.
Well, no, he doesn't. To be fair, he doesn't love Harry.
Well, he loves part of him, but part of him has a attachment to keeping Harry alive.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things and I don't remember if this was in the books or the movie or both, but because you wonder. For most of the books, I assumed that the reason Snape hated Harry so much was sort of a writing convenience.
Right.
Why does Snape hate him so much? Right. And then you find out, he got bullied by his dad. But even then, you're like, all right, okay, I could see, but it's a kid. I mean, at some point, don't you go like, well, yeah, he reminds me of that asshole, but okay, whatever. But the thing is, Lily died to save Harry.
Right.
And so, in some extent, Snape's like, she saved you. This is what she died for.
Yeah.
And he looked at Harry with disappointment, right?
Right. So, every time, so Harry comes to Hogwarts later on, and it's like the amount of emotion that Snape feels when he sees Harry.
Yes, and he's a celebrity.
Right. And just everything about this is just so
and he's in Gryffindor. He looks like his dad. Lily died to save him. He doesn't do well in classes. He seems a little bit bratty.
Well, that's other right. So that's another thing is that Harry, Snape is tasked by Dumbledore and also for his love for Lily about keeping Harry alive.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that Harry is going to stay alive is if he pays attention in class and learns things.
Right.
And Harry isn't as good as Hermione, right?
Nowhere near.
and so he gets upset sometimes because he wants Harry to be more studious because he cares. But Snape, because he's never had social skills, it comes out all wrong the way it always has. And so he is... So this is another part of complicated grief in that when we have someone who dies that's close to us, and, everyone's ran into this, is like someone close to you dies and you're devastated, So you're Snape, you're devastated. And then at some point, something will happen where you'll either not be thinking about the grief anymore, like it won't be the first thing that enters your head when you have time to think, and or something funny happens and you laugh. Most people will be like, "Oh, I'm laughing." I'm not supposed to be laughing.
Right.
I don't deserve to laugh.
Right.
Does laughing, is that demeaning of the memory of the loved one? Am I being disrespectful? Do I deserve to be happy? Okay. Right. So you're Snape, you're like, I don't deserve to be happy.
It's like being at a funeral of a loved one or relative.
And just laughing.
And laughing.
Right. If it's particularly difficult and Snape has no one to talk to. He can't talk to anybody.
Right.
I guess he can only talk to Dumbledore, and Dumbledore isn't always available. And he has a policy about keeping things close.
And by the way, and this I actually didn't realize, or I don't remember having thought of this angle, but today when I was catching up a little bit on the, just to remind myself, someone had pointed this out. Snape also had to pretend the whole time, because what happens is, imagine Voldemort comes back and any one of his spies, including Malfoy, because Lucius is super influential amongst the Death Eaters, and his son is at Hogwarts, right? Imagine the word gets back that, like, I think Snape's actually on Dumbledore's side, because he tends to be nice to Harry. It's over.
Right.
The whole effort is done.
Right.
So he, on top of everything else, he actually has to pretend, whether he really feels, I'm sure he does have all these resentments. On top of everything else, he actually has to pretend to be evil.
Right.
And this is something that maybe she didn't intend fully to write it this way, because I do think, even though she actually had the arc pretty well written out and she actually did a lot of back work before she even wrote the first book, at the same time, the first book, there's a lot of things in there that are written conveniently so that the first book works.
Right.
But so whether it was intentional or unintentional, in the end, it's got a plausible explanation.
Right. That's why after researching for this episode, I finally totally appreciate Rowling's writing, because if you just pay attention, if you're nerdy about it enough, then there are some very poetic things that happen very early on, from the first class of the potions that Harry goes to, and Snape is a total dick to Harry. You're like, I now want to read the books again because I want to, if you understand the backstory, it all makes total sense.
And by the way, it's not the kind of thing like in Lord of the Rings where, well, of course they couldn't use the eagles at this other time, because if you read Silmarillion, page 6050, I'm like, come on, man.
Right. So there's, throughout the books, Snape protects Harry and his friends, from Lupin when he turns into a werewolf, and but he also there's other times where he's pretty much mean to Harry throughout all the books. Snape helps the good guys. He's in the Order of the Phoenix, but then some red herrings happen where it's like, wait, he has the mark of the Death Eater, and and then he attacked one of the Weasley brothers when they were trying to get to
cuts
Hogwarts.
His ear.
Yeah, but that was an accident apparently. And then you have this Snape Sirius Black feud going on, but again, all that makes sense because Sirius Black was a total asshole to Snape.
Yep.
and Sirius Black thought that, and Snape thought that Sirius was the one who betrayed to find out where the Potter house was.
So basically, other than Voldemort, Sirius Black was probably the second person in Snape's kill list.
Right. And James too,
Well, but James had even I feel like Snape had gotten to the point where he would hate James forever, but it's not someone he would have wanted to kill.
No.
Versus he would have wanted to kill Sirius because it was his betrayal that led to Lily's.
Right. Then, as you talked about, Narcissa Malfoy gives Snape the unbreakable vow that says...
Is it Narcissa or Bellatrix? Is it Narcissa?
Narcissa.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. Because it's right. She's related to Draco, and she wants Draco protected. Is Narcissa Draco's mom?
I don't know.
I think it's Draco's mom.
Yeah.
So she's like, yeah, I want my son protected. So you got to make this unbreakable vow.
Right. So now you're Snape, and you're like, well, if I refuse, then I look like I'm
Right.
like I'm a double agent or a triple agent, and
Right.
so I guess I got to do it. And this is when Harry witnesses it, I think. Right.
And I want to reread these now, and this is getting me excited.
Right. So the vow is to protect Draco, to help him complete Voldemort's task, which is to kill, Dumbledore. And if Draco can't do it, then Snape has to complete it himself.
And if you break an unbreakable vow, you die.
Right. And so Snape becomes the dark arts professor, and he uses the dark arts to save Dumbledore from the Gaunt Ring. And this is when it's revealed that Dumbledore's going to die soon anyway.
Right.
And so it doesn't really matter.
Well, we don't find that out
Till later.
But
maybe even the very end of the seventh book.
But there was some hint because his hand was withering away.
Right. So it's interesting. It's like Dumbledore would have died anyway.
Yeah.
Snape needed to kill, either Draco had to kill Dumbledore or Snape had to kill him.
Yeah.
And Snape's like, well, it'll look better if I do it because then Voldemort will really trust me.
I think Gandalf. I think Dumbledore says something about Draco's soul. Like he doesn't want Draco.
And Dumbledore's like, dude, you got to kill me. Like Draco,
he's a kid. Still.
He's still a kid, and he's salvageable.
And he's got to finish his finals because he hasn't graduated yet.
Right. That was a whole other thing. It's like throughout the books, even up till like book 6, they're still playing fucking Quidditch. And Snape gives Harry detention so he can't play on the Quidditch.
Yeah.
And you're just like, really? Like after book 4, I feel like they should have just completely done away with.
Like, dude, it's too risky to be at school. And they sort of do, right? Like in book 5, he's not at school all year, right? Like, I mean, he's and in book 6, he goes on these long quests with Dumbledore.
but they're still like
They're still at school.
Total normal thing, and everyone still thinks Harry's a dick,
The other funny thing is that they often say like, Hogwarts is like the safest place, but all the bad shit happens at Hogwarts.
So Harry hurts Draco in a fight using the Half-Blood Prince spells that he's reading, which is really Snape's book, right?
Yeah.
And Snape gives Harry detention during the final Quidditch match.
It's the what's the slashing spell?
I don't remember. Dumbledore tells Snape that so we've already gone over that. Draco tries to kill Dumbledore. Snape kills Dumbledore himself. Harry attacks Snape. And this is an interesting scene here too, because at this point you're like, oh, Snape is evil because he just killed Dumbledore. I mean, is that what you thought?
No, I mean, but it was. Remember, at this point, I've already been the whole time second guessing everything, and I'm realizing, well, look, he had no choice because of the unbreakable vow.
So yeah, the way that Rowling writes, it's like, well, who knows? At the end of book 7, there could be a twist, and there was.
And I was certainly in shock. Like, did they really kill Dumbledore?
Yeah.
And then I was like,
well, I remember after book 6,
Snape has got to be good.
I remember after book 6, everyone was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
Because book 6 comes out, everyone's in line for overnight, right? Yeah. And then everyone runs home and instantly reads the book, right?
Yeah.
And then within like 8 hours, people are tweeting about it and Facebooking about it and stuff, or whatever we had back in, well, I guess it would have been like 2005.
I don't think we had any of that stuff. We had tweets, maybe.
No. Well, anyway, we had, but people talked about it. However people communicated in 2005. MySpace.
MySpace. Yeah. They were MySpace.
They were friend-stirring. They were kazaaing it. And people were like, "Oh my God!" And I remember there's all this talk about Jon Snow. Is he really dead?
Right.
Maybe he'll come back. right?
Yeah. No, I mean, people are like, well, no, Gandalf. I keep wanting to say he's not really dead, like because of this. And there were tons of theories I remember, but I was convinced he was dead. It's just that I both held hope / had my little theories that Snape was good and that this was somehow like on purpose.
Let's take a break, and when we get back, let's talk about the end of Snape's life. All right, we're back from the break. Let's continue the story here. So then Voldemort kills Snape because he thinks he needs to.
Well, so he believes that Snape controls the Elder Wand, and Voldemort's trying to get control of the Elder Wand because it's the most powerful wand.
Right.
Why
does he think Snape?
Because he thought that Snape killed Dumbledore, and Snape did kill Dumbledore. He thought Dumbledore controlled the Elder Wand when Snape killed Dumbledore, and therefore Snape now controls the Elder Wand. But what he doesn't know is that I think Harry did a Expelliarmus on Snape, and because he did that, Harry now controls the Elder Wand.
Oh.
Something along those lines.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So the point is, Voldemort thinks Snape controls the Elder Wand. If I kill him, I will control the Elder Wand.
See, that was a whole other thing that went over my head. So the Elder Wand isn't an actual wand.
It is.
Oh, it is a wand.
It is a wand, yeah.
So he took Snape's wand.
So the Elder Wand it was part of the whole, there was this whole story, remember, with the little circle and the triangle and the stuff. Yeah. But it was given to Dumbledore by, what's his name? Guy starts with a G, Grindelwald. So the Elder Wand was Grindelwald's wand, I believe. And he gave it to Dumbledore. Okay, so now Dumbledore is in possession of the Elder Wand. Okay. But Snape kills Dumbledore. And when you kill someone, you can take possession of their wand. Okay. Apparently also if you Expelliarmus someone, you can take possession of their wand, apparently, if I remember this right, or something along those lines. So
wouldn't Voldemort be able to just look at the wand and go like, well, that's not the Elder Wand. That's your rusty old wand you always have.
I don't remember that part of the scene. I don't know if he's holding it. I don't know if it doesn't matter if he's holding it or not holding it. I don't remember. Okay. But what I do know is Harry was the one that really controlled the Elder Wand.
Why doesn't he just ask for the Elder Wand from Snape?
Because you can ask for it, but if you don't control it, you can't use it.
And you have to kill them to...
You have to do either kill or Expelliarmus. I can't remember.
Do you know what I mean?
I know, but listen.
So while we're on this lines...
It makes sense when you read it. I just don't remember the details. But what I do know is Voldemort thinks that Snape's got it.
But so this is just another convoluted thing about the story. It's just like it's too complicated. Because to extend this, like, why did Harry beat Voldemort in the end?
So Voldemort kills Harry. Killing Harry removed the last bit of Voldemort that was protected by horcruxes. So now the only thing left of Voldemort was his body. And that made it possible to kill that one and be done with it. Now, why Harry was brought back is because of love, but it's a little bit of... They did a little bit of Deus Ex Machina there, but she explains it. It's just, maybe a braver story would have had Harry fully die, but whatever. I liked that he came back personally because it was nice.
And then who actually killed Voldemort in the end?
Well, I think Harry kills him isn't it like...
Do you know what I mean?
But it's been a long time. Look, it's been a long time.
Yeah, but who cut off Luke Skywalker's hand?
Princess Leia.
And who killed the Emperor?
This is not fair. Listen, these are only 3 movies, and I saw them a billion times each.
But do you know what I'm saying? Like,
no,
these
it's not fair.
Who killed Voldemort?
I've only seen the 7th movie.
I'm just saying, like,
I think I've only seen it in the theaters once.
Look, maybe if we looked into it, it would make sense. But the question of who killed Voldemort...
No, I'm pretty sure it's Harry. I'm pretty sure it's Harry. Okay, you're right. It should be obvious. But also realize that the fact that we can't answer it is going to be used against us in a court of internet. Right?
Yeah, but I feel like we've been pretty good up to this point.
Well, yeah, but look. What I'm trying to say is the reason I can't quite remember is because, and I guess this goes to your point, there's a lot that happens in that last battle.
But that one question should be pretty easy to answer.
Let me see. Like, so Voldemort kills Harry, and
Harry goes to
this limbo place.
Yeah, and his parents are there.
His parents are there, but love brings him back because of the thing that they had caught. Remember, there was the little ball with the thingy that Dumbledore with the snitchy thing.
No.
There's all this stuff that magic. It's magic.
Yeah.
And then
Harry wakes up and kills him. Anyway, so Voldemort before this point kills Snape because he wants to be, he wants the Elder Wand, and he has his snake bite Snape through the neck, which is pretty gnarly.
Hold on.
And let's go through it.
Okay.
Harry sees the whole thing. Harry runs to Snape's side as he's dying, and this is when Harry, really realizes, wait, Snape's been good this whole time.
Snape's been good.
Or Snape's a good guy.
He's the bravest soul.
Well, then Snape tells Harry to look. In the book, Snape says, "Look at me, because he wants to see
the green eyes,
the green lily eyes."
Which in the movie does he do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Snape cries, and then Harry he collects his tears, and then after Snape dies, he goes and sees the memories, and he learns the whole backstory.
The whole enchilada.
And this is when we learn the whole backstory of Snape. And we learn that he was plagued with mixed feelings about Harry and his father, and that it
is the epic Scooby-Doo of all Scooby-Doos.
And he's jealous and angry, and and we learn finally that Snape is an incredibly vulnerable, suffering, grieving, lonely, guilty, low self-esteemed human being. And when you see it from that perspective, it all makes sense. I mean, the way that Alan Rickman pulls it off, and I guess the vision in your mind that Rowling sort of portrays, is that it's right on the line between, is he a sadistic, unfeeling asshole, or is he suffering so much that he's just holding it all in? And I think what we realize in the end is it's the latter. Snape was suffering so greatly, and he was so racked with guilt and to some extent suicidal because of how bad he felt about everything, and so put upon by bullies and society. And he was bullied by the Muggle world. He was bullied by the Wizarding world. He falls in love with this girl. She dumps him for the bully. Then he's trying his best, and he causes Lily's death. And then Dumbledore uses him as a pawn. And and Dumbledore by the end of the books is like his mentor, maybe the only other person. He went from. Maybe I have my mom, and then he goes to Lily, and then he goes to Dumbledore, and then Dumbledore also kind of betrays him, and then he makes Snape kill him. I mean, imagine we haven't even talked about that.
Yeah.
Imagine if I told you have to shoot me in the head with a gun.
Yeah.
And you have no choice.
Right, and there's no money involved.
Yeah. and that's got to screw you up.
Right. And even if you're like, dude, I'm dying, I've got some terminal disease. That only makes it. I don't know if it makes it harder, but it's sort of like, wait. First of all, I'm trying to process the fact that you just told me that you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Now you're asking me to kill you.
Yeah.
Like in a violent. My God.
Yeah, I'm gonna be awake.
No.
And I'm gonna see it coming.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now,
that's got to screw you.
I think I just remembered, sort of. So Harry gets killed by Voldemort, eliminating the last Horcrux he could have held on to. Right.
Did Harry know he was a Horcrux at this point?
At that point, I think he had figured it out. Right?
So Harry knows he has to die.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Okay. So then, but he's got that little, I forget what it is. It's like a little golden-y thing. There's something that protects him. So he dies, goes to a little funny place, but he comes back. And then they do the thing with the wands where he attacks and then the wands do the thing. And then all the people that Voldemort killed come back and overwhelm him. And that's how he dies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. That's because love ultimately... This was the thing that Voldemort never understood is the power of love and blah, blah, blah. So something along those lines.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Okay. Years later, Harry names his second son Albus Severus after Dumbledore and Snape. and the kid grows up and is about to enter Hogwarts, Harry's kid, and Albus Severus Potter is worried that he's going to be sorted into Slytherin. He's like, oh no, am I going to get into Slytherin? I want to be in Gryffindor. And Harry tells his son, you were named for 2 headmasters of Hogwarts. One of them was a Slytherin, and he was probably the bravest man I ever knew.
Yeah. By the way, one gripe I did have was that they always kept Slytherin House around, and they all pretended, like, meaning the headmaster, everyone pretended like, it's fair. It's a fair system, right? But it was so not fair. You have one mean house, and the other 3 houses having to deal with this one mean house at all times. The Slytherin headmaster was always mean to everyone else and unfair to everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, I while going down this research rabbit hole today, there's a YouTube video that explains the origin story of the different of Hogwarts itself. Right. And there were 2 guys and 2 women. Yeah, and one of the
Salazar
guys,
Slytherin.
Yeah. And he was a horrible human being.
Let's see, Salazar Slytherin, Rowena Ravenclaw, Godric Gryffindor, and something Hufflepuff.
Yeah, and the Snape guy was kind of like the first Voldemort in some ways, right?
Salazar Slytherin, you mean?
Yeah, or the first Slytherin.
Salazar Slytherin. Yeah,
the first Slytherin.
He wasn't evil though. No, the thing is, he wasn't. He was about
purity.
He was about pure. But you know what it feels like to me? Sort of like our current, situation a little bit where we have to keep up appearances that like, well, today the president said something a little disturbing, or like in a similar way, you have this situation where it's like, oh, I can imagine they should do a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern type thing behind the scenes where we see it from like headmaster or like different professors' perspective, where they're in the break room and they're like, okay, how long are we going to sit here and pretend that this is normal? Slytherin House is just insulting everyone. Their little brat kids in that house are always bullying everyone. Right. Everyone pretends this is balanced.
Was there any nice person in Slytherin?
Not the way that we looked at it. Oh, I mean, there were a couple of gray zone ones, but for the most part, they were the bullies. They were the mean ones.
Well, the thing that I always sort of got was Dumbledore's perspective on that, which was a kind of meta wise perspective around the bigger picture, which was like, if you ask Dumbledore, like, why is slithering still a thing? He'd be like, well, you you need all types of people.
But no, right. But I feel
and they're not evil. They're just they're.
So here's what I'm saying is, if it were written a little more subtly, like it was just an adult movie with these themes, I could see, and I don't mean that in that way. I mean,
I'm sure there is a porn.
What I mean is
Hogwarts Harry. What would it be called? Harry Potter and the Chamber of Dildos.
Harry Plopper. And listen, what I'm trying to say is that I could definitely see the perspective of the yin yang thing, where they say, look. In fact, I think Dumbledore says this, right? He says, look, what happens is Slytherin are reckless, but they are also brave, and they do these things. So they say,
right. So wasn't
they
Snape,
break rules a bit, but they.
So Snape, for example, was Slytherin, right, and he was the key to the whole story.
Right, and Harry Potter was he was inclined towards that side as well because of his Voldemort part of him.
Innards.
Yeah, but so that's fine. But the way it plays out is a kid's story. Meaning, right. Slytherin is pretty much the bad guys.
Right. That's the whole thing. Like, we always have to remember that
it's a kid's story.
These are kids' stories that are, and we're not talking like you could argue Star Wars is a kid's story. No. The first Harry Potter book is
a kid's story.
Is written for 10-year-olds.
Yeah. And it was, so that to its credit, how amazing it could inspire so many adults, having been written for kids that were really kids.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So in that way, I mean, Rowling really pulled something off. And again, doing research for this episode, I have a total new appreciation for the whole story because it not only did it make sense to me, but I really have an appreciation for the way that she wrote Snape's character.
Yeah, dude, what a classic character in literature now. because such an arc and so many strong reasons to explain why and how and everything.
And everything kind of comes back to
It does. Now, I will say, I'm thinking back to if people are listening to this episode and they're true fans, can you imagine? We should almost ship like medicine of some sort, penicillin or something, because their heads are going to explode when we got to the point in this podcast where we didn't know how the hell Voldemort died or who killed him. They're going to be like, unsubscribe, unpatronized, you're done. Luckily, they won't hear this part because I'll tell them, I love you guys. No, but in all fairness, we do this because we love the material. We're not experts in the material. Yeah. We just love this stuff.
I mean, I will, yeah, I can totally empathize with that. I listen to podcasts where they talk about pop culture.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for me to listen to people when they're talking about things that I love, and not only do they not really understand it, but they're also trashing on it. Like, what was I listening to recently? I can't remember. It was listening to something. They were talking about some movie that came out recently, and it was a movie that I liked. I mean, I remember thinking I didn't love the movie, but I remember, and maybe it was the new Star Wars movie. I don't know, but they were talking about it like they barely understood it. They're like, so how many Star Wars, for example,
how many stars are there?
Yeah. How many Star Wars movies were there? And like, how, and
who killed Voldemort?
Yeah. Who, wasn't there a Darth Vader character in another movie? I don't get it. And it's like, it's really hard to listen to that. It'd be one thing if they're just like, yeah, I really liked it. But I don't really, but it's another thing when they trash on something and they don't, because they haven't spent enough time with it.
Many years ago, I think I told this one before, but I have a friend who we went to watch Heat, the movie Heat. Do you remember Heat? I love that movie.
Yeah, and that holds up.
And we're leaving the theater, and like, what'd you think? It's all right. I didn't like it so much. I'm like, what? Why did you? And then it's like, well, this didn't make sense. Why did Val Kilmer say such and such? I'm like, oh, what do you mean? Because of this other thing that they clearly said, and then this other thing happened. Oh, I was asleep during that part. What? So they were blaming plot holes and things they didn't understand because they had fallen asleep.
Right, which is essentially what I was doing because I wasn't really paying attention to the audiobook.
But I'm saying, like, and if you want to claim it was boring, so I fell asleep, that's fine. Right. But don't poke holes at things you weren't watching.
Right.
Like, that's not fair.
But I think it is a legitimate, I still think because you've been super into the books and to the movies.
Yeah.
And for me to just throw out a question, which, how did Voldemort die? And now, granted, you're not as a super nerd as people perhaps listening.
Or it's not recent. Like, at the time, I probably would have listed out the whole scene.
But it didn't stick with you.
You make a really good point, which is that, and partially it's because it is a 7-book series, and those last books are massive. Think about that.
Yeah.
Kids' books.
Yeah.
And they're massive.
Yeah.
And way more readable.
Like 1,000 pages or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet way more readable than the Lord of the Rings ones.
Yeah.
So I will say...
God, the Lord of the Rings books.
I will say you make a great point in that if you ask me, or if you ask anyone that's seen Star Wars once or twice about major plot points...
Or Lord of the Rings. I mean, like, they're... Like the climax of the movie, like, how does Sauron die? Berto, how does Sauron die?
The ring
burns
in the fire.
Right, the ring goes into the
no. But see, I was thinking you were going to use Lord of the Rings as also another example of complicated.
There are,
stuff.
but of the key moments, how does Sauron die?
Okay, the ring burns in the fire.
The ring goes into the
I see what you're saying. It wasn't the sword of Gryffindor stabbed Voldemort through the heart, which, by the way, it might have been.
Yeah. Well, and I remember when I read the books and saw the movies, I remember being like, man, that was such a. I remember being disappointed by the ending because I was like, it would have been so much cooler. It would have been so much cooler and so much simpler if they had. If I was writing the books, I would have had maybe either 3 horcruxes or maybe just 1 horcrux.
Well,
And the only horcrux was Harry Potter.
Right.
And Voldemort doesn't know that. And somehow Harry Potter and his crew trick Voldemort into believing the horcrux is something else, okay?
Yeah.
And forget about the Elder Wand. Like, that whole thing is just a red, like, who cares about the Elder Wand? You know, that doesn't really matter, right? And you just sort of make it so that Voldemort is dead set on getting this one item, and he hates Harry Potter and wants to kill him.
Yeah. Listen, you would have had a few less $1 billion as a result.
I know.
And right now you just finally nailed the nails in the coffin of this episode because you basically said.
But because I remember, because I was into it enough in 2006, just before the 7th book came out. I remember being enough into it at the time where I would speculate with you probably and other people about like how this was going to end. And I remember really hoping that the way it was going to end was that Harry was going to die.
Yeah.
And I remember everyone saying like, well, Harry has to die. Like that just has, because, you know, that just has to be the way it's ending. And then, you know, he kills Harry, or Harry sacrifices himself to save someone else.
To save everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. And Harry dies, boom, you know, Voldemort explodes.
Yeah.
And then everyone cries, and then they do a memorial, and then Hermione teaches at the school, and
they remember Harry fondly.
Yeah.
But they did more of the Jesus arc, right? Harry had the worst everything, and then he dies and came back. Now, I will say, so I don't disagree with you that in the end it is a complex puzzle, right? But it was that kind of story.
Right.
It was that kind of story.
No, you're right. It was very consistent of Rowling to have a very complicated ending to a book in a series of books with very complicated endings.
And so you are right to point that, like, and it's funny because I would have thought of Lord of the Rings in the opposite way, but you're right that when it came to how did the bad guy get defeated, they dropped a little piece of gold ring into a lava pit. That's simple.
Which they established
from the beginning, yes.
Like in chapter 3 of the first book.
And that's fair. And so
Gandalf says, this ring has to be destroyed.
So like, for example, again, this wouldn't have made so many billions, but if, for example, in book 2 or book 3, we would have found out the only thing that can defeat Voldemort is the sword of Gryffindor driven through his heart, but that cannot happen until we find out how he's staying alive. And then we find out it's Harry, then Harry dies, and then stab, and then he dies. Okay, something simple. Less $1 billion, but simple.
Would it have been less $1 billion?
I'm just using that as like, look, because she made a lot of money with this complicated story.
But to me, I wonder how much of the $1 billion was made by the world.
Yeah.
And because like there's a lot of things that go into making something popular.
Sure.
And story is one of them, but I don't think if my evaluation of because I enjoyed the books, the things that I think made the product because I spent money, you know, for the audiobooks, and the movies. I think the thing that made the product was the world, the look, the mythology, the humor, I guess, the interplay between Hermione and Ron and Harry, the fact that it was both for kids and adults, the fact that you could kind of nerd out on it, it had a lot of things in it that I think everyone kind of wants. I think everyone wants to go to a Hogwarts and be, you know, put in a house and have an instant bunch of friends that you can play games with, and I agree with you in similar way how Star Wars established a universe that we could all get behind. Right.
What I will say though is she put herself into an impossible situation on how to end that thing, and yet she did pull it off, right? Because think about it: if she had killed Harry, like many of us thought / maybe secretly hoped, or maybe not so secretly hoped, there would have been a whole other wave of disappointment and anger and betrayal, because many people might have wanted Harry to live, right? Another thing is, if someone had Avada Kedavra, because remember, the only ways that we know that people die in the story magically, the big way is by the unforgivable Avada Kedavra curse. If one of our heroes would have had to do that on Voldemort, it would have compromised that one's soul. So it would have had to have been like Snape doing it, but Snape was dead. Or it would have had to do Lucius, but Lucius, that would have been so anticlimactic. Malfoy, but then Malfoy's a kid, he also would have compromised his soul. In fact, that's why Dumbledore didn't want him to be the one to kill him.
You mean Draco?
Draco. So, yeah. So the problem is, she had to find a way for Voldemort to die that didn't have one of our heroes actually using the unforgivable curse on Voldemort. And that's why love had to be the way to triumph and blah, blah. But it is complex. I don't disagree. It is complex.
Right. But I totally agree. And that has bumped it up in my head.
Yeah.
That every book in the series had a very convoluted ending.
Yeah.
and gave you a sense, like you said, it wasn't like when you were reading the book or saw the movie, you were like, what? Like you were, it transported you along.
Right.
And
it led you to those moments.
And it made sense in the moment.
Yeah.
It was hard to describe later.
Yeah.
But the way she wrote it carried you along. But to me, I was, again, after book 4, I was kind of a reluctant enjoyer of the stories, and so it made it hard for me to enjoy.
To be fair, like think of Star Wars, right? It didn't, in fact, end with Luke Skywalker stabbing the Emperor through the heart with his lightsaber.
That's right.
Right? There was more complexity to the ending. Not nearly as much. Not nearly as much. But,
Darth Vader just threw him into a hole.
Well, but if I ask someone, like, so how did Darth Vader die? Okay, well, he was depleted from the exertion and the lightning powers of carrying. But you see what I'm saying? Like,
no, I don't know. The Emperor killed Darth Vader.
Not directly.
As Darth Vader was throwing him into a hole.
Not directly, and he didn't die right away. And then, but he died redeemed. And like, there's more to the story, right there. So even something as simple as the Star Wars arc didn't just end trivially.
It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple.
Well, remember, Luke Skywalker was a horcrux, so if he had
I'm just saying, like, and that's why I didn't like book 2. Because book 2, the ending, the whole story of book 2 was convoluted. The
other thing no one talks about is Anna Luke. Like, people don't like to admit that there was a romance between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. And it was brewing all the movies. People don't like it.
You're a Luke Vader shipper.
I'm a Luke Vader shipper.
Yeah, I will say again, especially in looking at Snape's character, that it really makes me want to read the books again with this understanding.
Yeah.
It's like seeing like a movie like Inception again, or movies you watch it again and or Arrival, for example, and it's like. It's more enjoyable the second time because you know the whole story, and you're like, oh, I can see why that's dropped in there, and that all makes sense. And
imagine if someone did make a movie from Snape's perspective, done in sort of a stylistic way, where you don't get a whole 7 other movies, you get like one movie, but it's watching the whole storyline, but from Snape's perspective in a condensed way, because you get these moments where he's not even in the main scene, but he's like, what the hell are they doing now? Like, I'm trying to keep this kid, and he's talking to himself, like, I'm trying to save this kid. Oh, God damn it, right? And then he's like talking to Dumbledore, like, listen, man, I don't know how much longer I can do this. Like, I have to act like I'm upset the whole time. I'm not this upset. I'm not this depressed.
I bet you someone's done this, but if they haven't, they should. Someone should write a diary of Snape.
Yeah.
Like, different diary entries throughout his entire life.
Right. And it turns out he was never that depressed. He was like, well, yeah, I liked her, but listen, I'm not obsessed with her.
But you know what I mean? It'd be so interesting because to have these entries of just like, yeah, so, Harry showed up today at school, but that's pretty tough because, he looks like James, and he also kind of looks like Lily. So, boy, I got a lot of feelings on the inside, Dear diary, complicated grief today.
Yeah.
Harry showed up. I think it'd be...
And then he's like, and I had to cry these fake tears as I was dying so that Harry would think I was a hero the whole time.
But I'm really Voldemort. I was Voldemort the whole time.
Because what you don't know is I'm a 15th horcrux.
All right. Well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Thanks for joining us out there. Please take care of yourself because...
you deserve it.
So can you say it like in a Snape way or something?
I could say it in a Dumbledore way, because you deserve it. Always.
Isn't there a better sort of way you could say it? I want to
Harry Potter must not return to Hogwarts this year.
do it
Is it
like
Dobby?
Yeah, do it like yeah.
Okay. You no, I can't. That doesn't even work. Hey, Harry, you deserve it. It's Hagrid. So how does Snape talk? Snape's like, attention. No, I can't do his voice. It's such a. Alan Rickman's so good at this. It's like, you will find that my class is very difficult, but that's not even right.
Because
Because you deserve it.